Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Inc. Today, I am joined by Rachel Richards, and she is a best-selling author, a financial educator, a former financial advisor, and very interesting fact, when she was 27, she retired herself and now lives on over $10,000 a month in purely passive income, which is absolutely amazing. So welcome to the show, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Allie. I'm so excited to talk to you.
So today we are going to be talking about a topic that honestly I don't discuss that much, and it's really going to be about the financials of your business, which we all know is really important. Some of us are very actively monitoring those things, and some of us are not doing exactly what we should be to either make sure we are prepared for a crazy situation like what happened during the shutdown of the coronavirus pandemic. And then some of us just may not be maximizing what we have to allow our businesses to grow in the direction that we want to. So Rachel and I are going to be talking a lot about these different things. Rachel, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself? I know I gave you a quick intro, but tell us a little bit more about you, why you're so passionate about this, and how you got to this place in your life.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So I'm Rachel. Like you said, last year at age 27, I quit my job and retired, and I'm now living off over $10,000 per month in passive income. So most people want to know, how the heck did I do that? And my journey with passive income started in 2017. I had always wanted to invest in real estate. So that's where I began. I figured at first I was going to retire off of rental properties. So my husband and I purchased our first duplex that year. And later that year, I wrote my first book, MoneyHoney, which I wrote because all of my female friends were coming to me for financial advice, and all the books out there are written by old white men. So I was like, oh, well, there seems to be a market need here, something for female millennials specifically. So I decided to take the topic of money management and make it sassy and fun and simple, and it's really, really resonated. So we had those two income streams, rental income and royalty income, and we just focused on growing those as much as we possibly could over the next few years. So fast forward to now, we own over 35 rental units in Kentucky, and I just launched my second book. And between those two sources, we're making anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 per month. So now I spend my time doing what I'm the most passionate about, which is continuing to educate young people on how to become wealthy.
I think that's amazing. And again, we already talked before the show began about a couple of things I want to talk about outside of the show. But that's another thing that is very interesting to me. It's so funny. About the same time, like 2017, my husband and I bought a property to flip. We made great money on it, but we had a daughter. We both started businesses. So things just kind of shifted away. But real estate is such an amazing opportunity to really build that passive income and to really set yourself up for, long-term financial success. So great advice for anybody in any business. I mean, there's always the opportunity to invest in real estate, which is not, in my personal opinion, ever going to lose its value. Things dip, but they always come back up. So super, super interesting. All right. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about maybe what you have noticed in terms of businesses that maybe they had to shut their doors permanently from being closed over the last few months, or maybe were hurt significantly. Is there anything that you saw that maybe they could have done differently, or things that you would advise people on to make sure that never happens in the future?
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking. I mean, there's so many restaurants and boutiques that are closing permanently because they just haven't had revenue in months, and it sucks. And sometimes with these things, like, no matter what you do, maybe there just wasn't a way to save it. So I will say that. I mean, sometimes you can try, and it's just not going to work. So I really have a lot of sympathy. But I would say one thing to focus on, and one thing that maybe business owners can consider, is having multiple sources of income. Because if you're a business owner and you're a boutique and you're selling products, or you're a restaurant and you have people come in to buy food, if that single source of income goes away or is reduced or is lost, then you're really going to have to scramble to figure out, well, how am I going to make money right now? And I think that's where a lot of people got into trouble. So I love talking about this concept of income diversification. It's, how can I take this business? Yes, I have my one main source of income, but how can I diversify that and have 5, 6, 7 sources of income? That way, if one goes away, you're still going to be kept afloat. So a great example just in my personal life right now is my rental income. It has been significantly impacted. I think a normal month I make $7,000 to $12,000 per month. In April, I made $1,000. So
Wow.
basically, I broke even.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I was like, well, that's fine. If I break even for a few months and that's my worst case scenario, I'm happy. But the reason I'm not in a total panic or I'm going to, have to file for bankruptcy or go into credit card debt is because I have these other income streams keeping me afloat. And they're totally unrelated, but any business owner can think about income diversification, making sure you have multiple sources of revenue, because that's really what's going to keep your income secure and stable in the long run.
Absolutely. And so this is something that I've had to talk about with my students primarily in our local marketing mastery program. So several of them are retailers and they did have to close their doors. So being able to just sell the exact same products online, I mean, that is a huge step in the right direction, because ultimately businesses that are a bricks and mortar retailer, they are relying on that foot traffic. And a lot of times they're relying on someone to come in for one thing and then purchase other things to be able to make more from those existing customers. Well, if you don't really have a clear understanding of how to sell those products online, which I've experienced with one of my students, I mean, she definitely wants to, but the process of everything that has to be done in order to make that happen can be a little bit overwhelming. You want to make sure that you prepare these things before you may actually need them, because when the time comes, if you're in a stressful situation, it's going to be that much more difficult to launch the technical aspects of something so brand new. The second thing that I'd like to mention is that your audience is actually where your money can come from, regardless of what you're selling. So if you are a restaurant, you are building a connection with people in your community. They are coming to you, they trust you, they know you, they like you. Yes, they want to buy food from you. Well, if something like this were to happen again, and kind of like we were talking about, it's not really if, it's when and in what capacity, do you think that they would be willing to buy other things from you as well? And I think the answer is yes. We buy from people we know, like, and trust. They already know, like, and trust you. So if you have an audience built up of a certain type of person, there are other products or services that that same type of person may be interested in, and they could be willing to buy them from you. So for example, one of the students I was talking about has a high-end retail store that focuses on custom linens and feel good, smell good things for the home and the body, and it's called Bedded Bliss, and it's an amazing store. So her audience is a higher income female, usually 40 and up, which is definitely a great audience. They've got a lot of spending power. They are a little bit more resilient when times are down. So another quick tip, maybe focus your products and services on people who are able to buy them even in hard times. But what other things could those exact same customers be interested in that you don't sell? Maybe it's makeup, maybe it's services, maybe it's partnering with an interior designer that you can refer to them. So affiliate sales is a super easy way to do that. Basically creating partnerships with other businesses. You're simply promoting what they have to your audience. And when someone buys, you make money. You do not have to manufacture or sell new products yourself. You don't have to come up with new services. You're simply taking this audience, which is the core of your business, giving them the opportunity to buy things that are in line with who they are. So not really something that many offline businesses think about. It's a big thing in the online space, but this can work anywhere. So just really remember that what those people are willing to buy can allow you to diversify in ways that you may have never considered. So super, super great tip. In terms of ways that they may be able to diversify, do you have any ideas or any examples that you would want to share, just showing something creative or something that you may suggest to other people?
Yeah, for sure. I was just talking to a photographer friend the other day, because photographers have been hit hard with social distancing. They
Yeah.
can't be up close with people. I loved when I first saw those photographers doing the front porch photo shoots. Have you seen those? Those are
I
so cool.
haven't, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that was a perfect example of like pivoting your business. I hate that word pivoting. It's so overused, but that's exactly what people are going to have to do right now.
Shifting. We'll say
Shifting.
shifting.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, really getting creative because you can do the same thing in a different way and still serve people. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, which you hit on a little bit, Allie, was you have to be able, if you're a brick and mortar physical location, you have to be able to transition your business to 100% online if you can. You should already be doing it. That should already be in place. But I think the people that already had that in place are faring a little bit better because for most businesses, you can sell the same things you're selling in person. You can sell them online. So I think the biggest takeaway is making sure, if this ever happens again, when this happens again, you're going to be able to take those same products and services and do it completely virtually, completely online.
100% agree. It's really interesting because my business is kind of a mix of online and offline. I still do, local networking. I still have clients that are local, but I'd say 80% of my business is, completely outside of my local area. Well, one person who was recently on the podcast, Stacy Tushel, if you guys remember, we were talking about her physical dance studios in Milwaukee. So she also is an online coach. So she has an online business. She has an offline business. Both do really well. She, exactly like you were saying, was not as stressed as most, even though her doors had to be physically shut. She could not serve her customers at all in the same way that she used to. But she knew, okay, I've got my online revenue. I'm not completely without revenue. Granted, are there a lot of expenses with having a physical location, paying your employees? Absolutely. But because of the knowledge she had from her online business, they, within 48 hours, offered their students online dance classes. Is it always as good as the original? Not necessarily, but you have to remember there are health coaches and trainers that do nothing but sell online through virtual classes. Okay. So if they can do it, you can do it. Physical training, like personal trainers, that has historically been a very in-person business. It doesn't matter. People are willing to do things. Some people don't actually want to go to a gym ever. They just want to be able to do it from home. Well, on the flip side, I spoke not long ago with the owner of a business who does soccer classes. So almost identical business to Stacy's at the end of the day. They had no revenue. They were very stressed. They didn't understand what they could do right now. And I suggested the virtual classes to her and she had never considered it. To me, as an online focused business owner, it's second nature to think about these things. If you don't already have the understanding when something hits, you may not have those ideas. That was an idea that Stacy implemented in 48 hours. And this other business, very much the same, had gone months without revenue. So just a very clear example of how having online and offline together works, but also having the assets already in place makes this so much more simple.
Yes, I totally agree. And I'll give you another example just from my personal business because I'm a best-selling author. And when, coronavirus happened, people started getting a lot more careful about how they were spending money. So book sales are going down for authors everywhere. So I was like, I have so much knowledge. I have such great content I can teach people. Are there other ways I can be teaching it besides just a book? And yes, there are literally hundreds of other ways I can be teaching it. I can create a workbook to go along with my book. I can do coaching. I can do group coaching. I can do masterminds or memberships. I can do online courses. And so I'll tell you what, in April, I decided I had been thinking about doing an online course for a long time. And I was like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see if there's a need for it and if people want it. So I offered it and I had such a great response. I learned that it's one thing to have the knowledge of money management. It's another thing to actually implement it. And that's what people struggle with the most. So by offering this online course, I was actually able to have a higher priced offering that actually helped my readers and my followers in a much more direct, hands-on way. So it was a win-win all around, but that's, another example of how I was able to take my existing business and just think about creating multiple sources of income from the same thing, essentially.
Oh, totally. The one final one I'll say, I've mentioned this we did a how to take your local business online episode, right when this started. I still think this is amazing. If somebody could please just do it, I would be really excited for you. We work with contractors and remodelers. Someone please create a consult with a contractor program that helps DIYers have contractor support through the process virtually. You don't have to be there. Help them with the steps, help them with their material list, the process, tips and tricks. That's literally taking your knowledge, because every business owner, it doesn't matter if you sell information. Like, contractors don't sell information, they sell a service. But the information they have applies to other people who may not ever hire them. It's just something that anyone can apply, but for whatever reason, it becomes extremely difficult for business owners in the local space to see what that alternative virtual business may look like for them. So one other thing we talked a little bit about, your experience in real estate. These business owners, many of them are bricks and mortar. So they have a physical location. We talked briefly about this before we got started, but what are your thoughts on having that physical location? Should you own it? Should you rent it? Is there anything that you can do to try and reduce expenses, or just think about those in a much more smarter way?
Absolutely. So I love talking about the decision between renting versus owning. I think with business owners, it's a lot more, it's different, and everyone's situation obviously is going to be different. The first 12 months as a business owner, they're so important. You're learning what your revenues are, what your expenses are, and your revenue can really fluctuate a lot in the first 12 months, and hopefully it's growing over that period of time. So, when I think about deciding to purchase a rental property, the decision is very cut and dry for me, because I can do the numbers. I know pretty much exactly how much it's going to rent for. So I know my revenue, I know all of my expenses. It's very easy for me to go in and make that purchase. However, as a business owner just starting out, it's not so simple, because projecting that first 12 months and that ongoing revenue is actually a lot more complicated, and you don't know exactly what those revenue projections are going to look like. So, and I haven't owned, a brick and mortar physical location myself, but I would say if I was going to look at that, I would rent for the first 12 months and really get a handle on what my revenues are and what my expenses are. And then more long-term, I would definitely look into owning that building and owning that real estate, because that's a great way to get your expenses down. And something you can even consider is if, you're in a strip mall or a shopping center and you have the means, or you can partner with somebody to actually own that entire shopping center or that, entire office building, then you can own the building and have this really awesome asset that's working for you. And you can lease out the office spaces to other business owners and basically get your own space free of rent. So there's tons of advantages to doing that. I think it's great for the long term. I would just start off by renting for the first little bit to really ensure you're going to be making the revenue you think you're going to make, and that you're going to be able to survive and thrive in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of just analyzing those decisions for yourself and your business, sometimes it is not cut and dry. You will have to look at a lot of different aspects of your situation, and you just need to be willing to do that. So we talked a bit earlier about, trying to really understand which purchases might be best for you. If someone is thinking about investing in something for their business, whether that is in a time of prosperity, or whether it is in a more difficult time, I don't think that ever goes away. Business owners always need to be very intentional about what they're spending their money on. So what do you suggest, whether it's personally or professionally? What types of investments are worth it? What types of investments are credit worthy in order to make them, versus what you may need to save up for in cash? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think business owners, when it comes to spending money, they just have to be so protective of their profit margin. And the biggest mistake I see business owners making, and I'm guilty of this myself, is just spending money without really thinking through that decision. Because a lot of times you just feel like, oh yeah, well, I need to spend the money on this, and I need to get this website, and I need to get this email marketing campaign and stuff. And a lot of the times you really have to pause and ask yourself, what Do I really need to though? Is it really 100% necessary? And I think the most important question you can ask yourself as a business owner is, okay, if I'm spending 20 bucks or 100 bucks or 1,000 bucks on whatever this is, am I going to generate that 20 bucks, 100 bucks or 1,000 bucks back in revenue? Because if not, then you really need to ask yourself, well, is this really necessary? You know, one thing I did really well with publishing my first book, MoneyHoney, is I had no idea if I was going to make even $1 from publishing it. I had no idea if it was going to do well or not. Luckily, it did way better than I ever thought. But at the time, I just wanted to be really frugal and conservative, and I didn't want to be out thousands of dollars. So I launched MoneyHoney for under $600, which is very, very cheap. And at the time, I was like, okay, what are the essentials? And the two essentials I came up with was a good editor and a cover design. So that's what I spent my money on. And I always tell people those are the two musts. Everything else is sort of optional. I formatted it on my own. I did as much as I could on my own because I was treating it as an experiment. So I decided to just try to DIY and save money. Now, later on in your business, if you try to DIY too much, you'll get in trouble because there does come a point where you have to start outsourcing things or else you're going to really limit your revenue growth. So it's a hard line to walk and to balance. But, you know, I think in general, new business owners saving as much as they can, trying to do as much as they can on their own, that's a better way to approach things until you really understand what your revenues are going to be. And then later on, once you have a better idea, you know how much you're making, then you know your budget and how much you can outsource and start focusing your time on the true revenue generating activities.
I think that is such an important point. And so in terms of my experience with business owners, I mean, this is something that we come back to time and time again. So as a marketer, my only goal is to help someone generate a return on investment. What that return on investment may look like is definitely going to vary from person to person. So some of our clients are lower ticket, but high recurring revenue. So anywhere between once a month to 4 times a month, where they're keeping clients for years. So some of our clients are more of a one-time high ticket purchase. Totally different things to think about, but ultimately, you know, it all comes back around. But knowing your numbers and what that customer lifetime value is crucial. Because if you are, for instance, launching a brand new online marketing campaign, there's absolutely expenses that go into it. There's expenses that go into it on the front end for all of the setup. And then of course, you're gonna wanna actually use it and spend money on your marketing. So when you're thinking about what might be a good fit, you don't have to always outsource from the beginning. Exactly like you said, that is why I actually created Local Marketing Mastery, because as an agency, I don't believe everyone needs agency services. It's not a good idea for a lot of people. And I would never feel comfortable offering it to somebody who I thought was not in the right position to be able to do this successfully. And what that might look like is someone who's their back end of their business still needs a lot of work, to where despite the leads that are generated, if you don't have a good conversion and ascension process, especially if you're someone like a recurring revenue business, until that is taken care of, you may not see what you could see with that exact same system. So it may be a better idea for you to do it on your own. And it doesn't mean completely independently, exactly like you were talking about, by offering more of hands-on support instead of just information. You got to make sure you're doing it the right way if you want to trust that this experiment could be good for you. But there's nothing wrong with doing it yourself, seeing what those results are, and then moving forward. Because I can't tell you how many people that have actually joined that specific program, they don't see this as the end. They see it as the beginning. I'm in a position where right now I can't financially justify paying someone thousands of dollars to manage this for me. I still know I need to do it, but this is the place that I'm at. So this is what I'm going to do. But my ultimate goal is to then outsource it to you later, which is totally reasonable, you know, and sometimes it is a time versus money trade-off. Of course, if you're doing it yourself, just like you did with your book, you had to invest your own time. But because you had really analyzed the risks financially, you knew that if you didn't want to potentially put yourself in a bad spot, you needed to be smart. And maybe that meant staying up an hour later every night to work on that. Maybe it meant sacrificing some of those other things that aren't moving the needle. things that you don't even actually think about. That's something we could probably talk for a long time on, is what's your time worth and are you spending it the right way? Because time alone, like you said, if you do try and do everything yourself for too long, you will not get the right return because your time becomes more and more valuable as your business grows. Analyzing what you're wasting time on right now might be a perfect way to fit something new in that allows you to spend it on something that is going to generate a big return. So know your numbers, know your average purchase value, know your customer lifetime value, know the products and services that will increase sales from existing customers, and actually figure out a way to offer them to those people on a regular basis. So I think that's really great. Just being frugal when you need to be frugal if you don't have the data to back it up. And it doesn't have to be for brand new businesses. You know, it could be something, like I said, a new online marketing system. This business could have been there for 20 years. They may have already had offline systems that they have gotten to work well for them. But it doesn't mean things will be perfect from day one if they do this other type of option. So just really ask yourself, you know, if this were to take several months to work out, would I be okay with the money that I've spent? Am I still going to be able to bring that back in at a later date? So really, really good advice there. In terms of like technical implementation of becoming more financially literate as a business owner or more financially proactive, are there any tips, tools, programs that you would recommend that would allow someone to plan in advance? So I'm a big believer in planning. You know, if you don't plan, the world is going to kind of force you in the direction that it wants you to go, just like your money will spend itself essentially if you don't tell it where to go. So what would you say would be some great steps for tracking and implementing the right financial decisions moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a wealth of information out there. A lot of it is free. So the first step is just being proactive and self-educating. That's how I learned the majority of what I know about money management is that I'm just an avid reader. So be interested, pick up some books, read some articles online. I mean, that's the first step. I would say the next step when it comes to securing your financial future is having an emergency savings fund. And this is something I talk a lot to individuals about, but this also applies to small business owners and brick and mortar stores, because it's absolutely essential to start off with just having $1,000 emergency fund. That way, you know, any unexpected little expenses, you can cover it from your emergency fund. You don't have to put it on a credit card. You know, that's step number one. But then ultimately, you need to have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. And for an individual, that's because if their hours get cut, they lose their job, they lose their income, they're going to have that time where they can get back on their feet and they're not going to have to worry. So that's absolutely essential. For a local business owner, it's the exact same thing. You have to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up, because I guarantee that a lot of those small business owners, if they had had that in place going into this, they would have been able to survive a lot better through this and even thrive. And the great thing about having that emergency savings fund is that when and if you do lose your revenue stream or your income, you're not going to be operating out of a place of panic or desperation. And so that's one of the reasons my business is still doing well. You know, I have lost a lot of rental income, but I'm not totally panicked and I'm not totally being pushy and salesy and promoty, because I'm just cool and I know that I'm going to make it through this. So it really helps a lot with your mentality as well. It gives you the ability to sit back and think, okay, I have some time. How can I shift my business? How can I create other streams of revenue? What else can I do in the meantime so that I can start generating revenue again? So it just buys you time. I think that's so important as a small business owner, because you will run into trouble. It's a cyclical thing. You know, there will be other recessions. There will be other things that happen that totally interrupt your business model, and you just have to be prepared. So that is the main thing to focus on, whether you're a new or existing business owner, making sure you have that savings fund in place.
I think that is very simple yet powerful advice. And sadly, not enough business owners are doing that intentionally. So if you haven't been, go ahead and take a look at what the financial reality is for you right now, which for some can be scary, actually digging into the numbers. And that's one reason why people avoid it and keep avoiding it, is because they're scared of what they're going to see. But I personally believe that ignorance is not bliss, that knowing the truth about a situation is far better no matter what you're going to find, because then you can formulate a plan that's going to work with the reality of things, not with what you hope they are or assume they are. So if you're not sure exactly where your business is financially right now, maybe you're surviving, but you're not sure if you could cut expenses in places on things you're not using. Subscriptions can like suck you dry without even realizing it sometimes. We're doing that in our business right now. I operate with a bazillion monthly subscriptions. Some of them are key to operating the business, and some of them you get for a certain thing. You don't need them anymore, but you never cancel it. Those things alone may be preventing you from adding that money to your emergency fund. So take an honest look at where you are. Remember that if you have been hit very hard financially, as many business owners have, it's not the end for you. Everyone goes through hard times. And if you are still able to serve, if you are still able to perform those things that were making you money, and even if you weren't and you're willing to get creative, the opportunity is still there. You don't have to end 2020 at a loss. You can still end it greater than 2019. The question is, are you going to do what it takes to get there? Are you going to get creative? Are you going to diversify your income? Are you going to look at really effectively reaching people that want to buy from you and trying to sell more to the people who already buy from you? The options are endless. But I think that this is such an important topic right now. And if you guys really take anything from this, it's just that understanding where you need to be before you need it is pretty powerful. So there's no time like the present. Go ahead and start today. So Rachel, if you could give these business owners one more piece of advice, whether it's something we talked about today or not, what would you tell them?
I think it's important to have a CPA. And Allie, you touched on something important. Ignorance is not bliss. When I've spoken to a lot of individuals and business owners about their anxieties and the money stressors, it all actually stems from the uncertainty because they don't have a clear picture of what's going on with the money. And that causes such severe anxiety. Once you actually just sit down and decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to be totally honest with myself. I'm going to look at my income and all of my expenses and all of my debts. Then I promise you, you will feel a sense of relief. You have to know what's going on. You will feel so much better. So, you know, the first step is just doing that. And when you have a CPA, it's important to have one because I think, you know, a lot of times if you're an individual or just full-time employee and you have a really simple income source and tax setup, you can do TurboTax. But once you get into owning real estate and owning small businesses, I think CPA is so important. But that doesn't mean that you don't look at your financials ever, because you still have to be on top of the bookkeeping and on top of the accounting. And even if you want to delegate and outsource the bookkeeping, that's fine, but you have to be involved and you have to look at those numbers every single week, every single month. You know, hire a bookkeeper if you don't want to do it yourself, but also make sure that that bookkeeper is going to do regular, consistent reviews with you. Because as the business owner, that's the most important thing for you to understand is your revenue, your expenses, your debts, your assets. You have to be on top of it. It's your responsibility and you have to own it. So I would just say, you know, really get involved with your finances, use a CPA, but like don't just delegate everything to the CPA. Make sure you're still really hands-on and you have a really clear picture of what's going on.
And one final thing to note, this ties into so many things in life, but if you are using a bookkeeper, if you are using a CPA and they're telling you things that you need to do to improve your financial situation, don't just listen to them. Actually do those things, because if you don't, you're going to be in the exact same situation later on. Implementation of the information is what you have to do, because things don't just magically happen. You have to make them happen. So Rachel, this was so informative, so needed. I really appreciate you being here with us today. If people want to learn more about you, more about your books and your services, where can they go to find you?
Yes, thank you. So both of my books, MoneyHoney and Passive Income, Aggressive Retirement, are available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audio. And if anyone wants to download my free Passive Income bonus kit, this can help you really diversify your income. You can download that at moneyhoneyrachel.com/bonus.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I hope you guys have taken a lot from this, and I will see you next time.